Admiral Vashey stood before the towering crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers, his 6 arms trembling with barely contained panic. The holographic displays around him painted a picture of absolute devastation. Entire star systems consumed, fleets obliterated, Earths and billions of lives snuffed out like candles in a hurricane. The Skreeth war machine had torn through the Outer Rim territories with terrifying efficiency, and now they were running out of options. Honorable counselors, Admiral Vashey began, his voice cracking slightly through the universal translator. The situation has become dire. The Skreeth have breached the Kepler defense line. Our projections indicate total galactic conquest within 18 standard cycles. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled delegates. Judge Quintara, her massive frame hunched over the judicial podium, fixed Admiral Vashey with her 3 glowing eyes. Admiral, surely you exaggerate. The combined might of 47 civilizations cannot fall to these barbarians. I wish I were exaggerating, Your Honor, Admiral Vashey replied, gesturing to the tactical displays. They have adaptive technology we cannot comprehend. Every strategy we deploy, they counter within hours. Every weapon we field, they improve upon and turn against us. We have exhausted our conventional options. The chamber erupted in panic chatter. Delegates from dozens of species clicked, chirped, and buzzed their distress in languages spanning the electromagnetic spectrum. Judge Quintara slammed her ceremonial gavel, a sound that could shatter lesser beings' eardrums. Order. We shall have order in these proceedings, she bellowed. Admiral Vashey, what do you propose? The Admiral's shoulders sagged as he activated another holographic display. A small, blue planet appeared, rotating slowly in the chamber's center. Several counselors recoiled in disgust. Earth, Admiral Vashey said simply. The 3rd planet in the Sol system. The reaction was immediate and unanimous laughter. Not the polite, diplomatic chuckling one might expect from such distinguished beings, but full-throated, belly-shaking guffaws that echoed off the chamber walls. You cannot be serious, wheezed Counselor Thexani, wiping tears from her compound eyes. Those primitive apes? They still use fossil fuels. They fight wars over imaginary lines drawn on maps. They worship invisible sky beings and argue about which sports team is superior, added Delegate Morvan, his tentacles writhing with amusement. How exactly do you propose these barely evolved mammals assist us? Judge Quintara raised a clawed hand for silence, though her expression suggested she found the proposal equally absurd. Admiral, while I appreciate desperate times calling for desperate measures, this borders on cosmic comedy. Earth's inhabitants have not even achieved basic galactic citizenship. They still kill each other over resource distribution. Admiral Vashey straightened his posture, though his confidence appeared forced. Your Honor, our xenobiologists have studied human behavior extensively. They possess certain unpredictable qualities. Perhaps unconventional thinking might succeed where traditional warfare has failed. Unconventional thinking. Judge Quintara repeated slowly, as if tasting something unpleasant. You mean chaos. Random, illogical chaos. Sometimes chaos succeeds where order fails, Admiral Vashey replied weakly. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of life support systems. Judge Quintara's 3 eyes closed in what could only be described as cosmic resignation. Very well, she said finally, her voice heavy with defeat. Communications Officer Moran, prepare a distress transmission to Earth. May the cosmic forces forgive us for what we are about to unleash upon the galaxy. Moran, a smaller being with elongated fingers perfectly designed for operating complex communication arrays, nodded reluctantly. Broadcasting to Earth now, Your Honor. Though I suspect their response will be educational. As the transmission fired across space toward the small blue planet, every being in that chamber shared the same thought. Surely these backwards apes could not possibly make things worse. They had no idea how spectacularly wrong they were about to be. 3 standard days later, Admiral Drohorn sat in his command center aboard the flagship Eternal Vigilance, staring at the incoming transmission with the kind of expression typically reserved for discovering one's dinner, was still alive and attempting escape. The message from Earth had arrived with surprising speed, which should have been encouraging. Should have been. Admiral, Communications Officer Zeftal announced, his voice betraying obvious confusion. Earth has responded to our distress call. Excellent, Admiral Drohorn replied, settling into his command chair with renewed hope. What do they say? Zeftal's mandibles clicked nervously. Quote, Hey there, space buddies. Got your message. Sounds like a real pickle you're in. Don't worry, we're sending our best people. They'll be there in about, let me check my math, Tuesday? Maybe Wednesday. Depends on traffic. Signed, General Patricia O'Malley, Earth Defense Force. End quote. Admiral Drohorn blinked slowly, processing this information. Traffic? That appears to be their term for spacecraft congestion, sir. I see. Admiral Drohorn rubbed his temple ridge, already feeling a headache forming. Well, at least they are responding positively. Surely their best people will be seasoned warriors, brilliant tacticians, perhaps even philosophers of warfare. Morden, the fleet's chief strategist, looked up from his tactical displays with barely concealed skepticism. Sir, forgive my pessimism, but these are the same beings who once fought a war that lasted 100 years over a bucket. That cannot possibly be accurate, Admiral Drohorn replied. I assure you it is, sir. The War of the Oaken Bucket, 1,325 Earth Standard, over 3,000 casualties. About a bucket. Before Admiral Drohorn could process this disturbing historical tidbit, the ship's proximity alarms began chiming. A sleek, silver vessel had appeared on their sensors, approaching at standard diplomatic speed. Earth vessel requesting permission to dock, announced Zeftal. They identify themselves as Task Force Awesome Sauce. Admiral Drohorn's hope took another significant blow. Task Force what now? Awesome Sauce, sir. I have triple-checked the translation matrix. 20 minutes later, Admiral Drohorn stood in the main docking bay, flanked by his finest officers in their ceremonial dress uniforms. Honor guards stood at attention, weapons gleaming, banners unfurled. The moment called for dignity, gravitas, and the solemn respect due to warriors about to face cosmic annihilation together. The airlock hissed open, and out stepped humanity's finest. Commander Tom Malley emerged first, a tall human wearing what appeared to be military attire covered in small patches, depicting cartoon animals engaged in various forms of mayhem. He carried a steaming cup of some dark liquid and wore an expression of perpetual mild confusion. Greetings, noble warriors of Earth, Admiral Drohorn proclaimed, stepping forward with outstretched arms. We welcome you in this dark hour. Oh, hey there, Commander Tom Malley replied cheerfully, nearly spilling his drink while attempting what might generously be called a salute. Sorry, we're a bit late. Had to stop for coffee. You guys have coffee? Please tell me you have coffee. Behind him emerged his team, a woman juggling what appeared to be circular pastries, a man dragging a massive bag labeled emergency snacks, and another human wearing sunglasses indoors while nodding to music only he could hear. I am Admiral Drohorn, the Admiral continued, determined to maintain diplomatic protocol. These are my senior officers. We have prepared a strategic briefing on the Skreeth threat. Sweet. Commander Tom Malley exclaimed, accepting a pastry from his teammate. I'm Tom. This is Amy, Brandon, and Carlos. We brought donuts. They're glazed. Well, most of them. Carlos ate the chocolate ones during the flight. Amy Kowalski stepped forward, offering the circular pastries to the bewildered alien officers. Anyone hungry? Long trip, right? We've got coffee too, but it's probably pretty terrible by now. Morden leaned close to Admiral Drohorn, his voice barely a whisper. Sir, are we absolutely certain these beings represent Earth's finest military minds? Admiral Drohorn watched as Commander Tom Malley attempted to shake hands with a ceremonial statue, apparently unaware it was not alive. I am beginning to have doubts, Morden. Perhaps Morden suggested delicately we should ask if Earth sent anyone else? The strategic briefing room aboard the Eternal Vigilance had been designed to inspire awe and tactical brilliance. Holographic displays showed enemy positions with military precision, star charts indicated optimal fleet movements, and the massive conference table could accommodate the galaxy's greatest military minds. It was a shrine to organized warfare, which made the current scene all the more disturbing. Brandon Torres stood before the central display, pointing at Skreeth battle formations with what appeared to be a half-eaten donut. "Okay, so, here's the thing about your whole tactical superiority problem," he announced, crumbs falling onto the pristine control surface. "You guys are thinking about this all wrong." General Kraftnog, a towering warrior from the militant Cruxan Empire, shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced chair. His species had conquered 17 star systems through pure military discipline. Watching this human explain warfare while consuming pastry was causing his 3 hearts to beat irregularly. "Please, enlighten us," Admiral Drohorn said, though his tone suggested he was already regretting this decision. "Right? So your basic problem is you keep trying to outthink them, yeah?" Brandon continued, now using his donut as a pointer. "But what if, and hear me out here, what if we just didn't think at all?" The silence that followed was so complete that the ship's life support systems sounded thunderous by comparison. "Excuse me?" Morden asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "No thinking. Random chaos. Complete unpredictability." Brandon Torres grinned widely, as if he had just solved the galaxy's greatest mystery. "See, they adapt to logical tactics because logic follows patterns. But if we do completely random stuff, they can't adapt because there's nothing to adapt to." General Kraftnog's eye began twitching. "That is not strategy. That is madness." "Exactly." Brandon pointed at him enthusiastically. "You're getting it." "Yay." Meanwhile, Amy Kowalski had begun unpacking her equipment bags onto the conference table. Admiral Drohorn watched in growing alarm as she produced rolls of silver adhesive material, numerous small cylindrical containers, and what appeared to be printed images of small furry earth creatures engaged in various humorous situations. "What are those items?" Admiral Drohorn asked, dreading the answer. "These?" "Oh, these are our weapons," Amy replied matter-of-factly. "Duct tape, energy drinks, and premium memes. The holy trinity of human problem-solving." Quartermaster A, whose job involved supplying armies with ammunition, armor, and provisions, leaned forward intently. "Those are weapons?" "Well, duct tape fixes everything, energy drinks make you temporarily invincible, and memes destroy enemy morale through psychological warfare," Amy explained, as if this were perfectly obvious. "Watch this." She held up one of the images, a small orange feline with the text "ICAN has victory" printed beneath it. Several alien officers recoiled instinctively. "You see?" Amy continued. "Instant confusion. The enemy won't know how to respond to weaponized absurdity." General Kraftnog stood abruptly, his massive frame trembling with barely contained outrage. "This is not warfare. This is children playing games. Bingo." Commander Tom Malley interjected, raising his coffee cup in salute. "War is totally a game. A really expensive, dangerous game where people die, but still technically a game. You guys have been taking it way too seriously." "Taking it too seriously?" General Kraftnog roared. "Billions of lives hang in the balance." "Right, which is exactly why you need to chill," Brandon Torres replied, patting the general's arm in a gesture that nearly caused an interstellar incident. "Stress kills, big guy. Gotta stay loose, stay flexible, stay slightly caffeinated." Quartermaster raised a tentative appendage. "If I may ask, what supplies will your forces require for this strategy?" Amy Kowalski produced a handwritten list from her pocket. "Let's see here, rubber chickens, hot sauce, whoopee cushions, laser pointers, bubble wrap, kazoos, and at least 40 cases of that really spicy ramen with the cartoon rooster on the package." "Rubber chickens?" Quartermaster repeated slowly. "Psychological warfare," Amy nodded sagely. "Nothing says we don't take you seriously like attacking with rubber livestock." And the hot sauce? Improvised chemical weapons. Also makes food taste better during siege conditions. Warden began furiously taking notes, though whether for tactical analysis or future psychiatric evaluation remained unclear. Let me understand this correctly. Your plan is to abandon all military doctrine, supply your forces with novelty items and condiments, and hope that complete randomness somehow defeats an enemy that has conquered half the galaxy? Now you're thinking like a human. Commander Tom Mali exclaimed proudly. Admiral Drohorn buried his face in his hands, a gesture that translated across species as universal despair. What have we done? You've called for help. Brandon Torres replied cheerfully. Don't worry, we've got this. Probably. Maybe. What's the worst that could happen? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud, and every alien in the room realized simultaneously that they were about to find out exactly what the worst that could happen actually was. They had asked for saviors. Instead, they had received weaponized insanity. The Skreeth armada emerged from hyperspace with the precision of a cosmic clockwork mechanism. 237 vessels arranged themselves in perfect geometric formations, and their dark hulls bristling with weapons that had reduced entire civilizations to stellar dust. Admiral Vashi watched from the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance as enemy ships took standard attack positions, their movements calculated and methodical. They are maintaining textbook formation, reported Tactical Officer Grixven, his voice tight with professional respect despite facing certain doom. Standard flanking maneuvers, coordinated weapon targeting, disciplined advancement. They expect us to respond with conventional tactics. Of course they do, Admiral Vashi replied grimly. Every species they have conquered fought according to established military doctrine. They have seen every strategy, countered every formation, adapted to every weapon system in the known galaxy. Sir, Communications Officer Moran announced, his voice cracking with disbelief, the humans are requesting permission to begin their attack. Admiral Vashi closed his eyes briefly, wondering if this was how civilizations ended, not with glorious last stands or noble sacrifices, but with complete bewilderment at their own allies. Permission granted. May the cosmic forces have mercy on us all. The first sign that something had gone terribly wrong with the natural order of warfare came exactly 37 seconds later, when every speaker system throughout the Allied fleet suddenly erupted with the most horrifying sound Admiral Vashi had ever experienced. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, blared across all communication channels as Commander Tom Mali's voice, which possessed all the musical quality of a dying star, began what could only generously be called singing. What is that noise? Tactical Officer Grixven demanded, his auditory organs reflexively sealing themselves. That appears to be Commander Mali, Moran replied, checking his instruments frantically. He has somehow overridden our entire communications array and is broadcasting music? I think? Bunts. The Skreeth formation immediately began showing signs of confusion. Their perfect geometric patterns wavered as ship commanders presumably tried to understand what form of psychological torture was being inflicted upon them. Never gonna run around and desert you. Commander Tom Mali continued, his voice now accompanied by what sounded like several humans attempting to play musical instruments they had clearly never seen before. Admiral Vashi watched in fascinated horror as 3 Skreeth destroyers actually collided with each other, their pilots apparently so distracted by the auditory assault that they forgot basic navigation protocols. Sir, Moran announced, his voice barely audible over the continued musical carnage, I am receiving reports from across the fleet. Human personnel have somehow gained access to our entertainment systems and are broadcasting something called Earth's greatest hits to enemy vessels. They are attacking them with music? Admiral Vashi asked, though he was no longer surprised by human behavior. Not good music, sir. Very, very bad music. On the tactical display, the Skreeth formation was beginning to completely fall apart. Ships were breaking ranks, changing course randomly, and in at least one documented case, actually retreating from the battlefield while rotating in circles. Sweet Caroline. Ba ba ba. came a new voice over the speakers, apparently belonging to Amy Kowalski, who was now leading what sounded like an entire chorus of humans in songs that violated several galactic treaties regarding sonic warfare. "This is unprecedented," Tactical Officer Skreeth reported, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. "The enemy appears to be suffering from acute tactical confusion. Their command structure is breaking down." But the musical assault was only the beginning. Torres had apparently seized control of the fleet's information warfare systems and was now bombarding enemy ships with what he called premium content distribution. "Attention, Skreeth warriors." Brandon's voice cut through the musical chaos. "Check out these hilarious memes. You will not believe what happens next. Doctors hate this one simple trick. Click here to find out if you are a true Skreeth or just pretending." Admiral Vashi watched in stunned silence as enemy ships actually began slowing down, presumably as their crews became distracted by whatever incomprehensible content Brandon was transmitting. "Sir," Moran reported, "sensors indicate the enemy fleet's command efficiency has dropped by 73%. They appear to be, I cannot believe I am saying this, they appear to be arguing among themselves about something called which Earth animal they most resemble." The sight of Commander Tom Malley's fighter squadron was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the entire engagement. They flew in no discernible formation, frequently spinning upside down for no tactical reason, but occasionally stopping mid-battle to take what appeared to be photographs of themselves with enemy ships in the background. "Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?" Commander Tom Malley's voice had somehow gotten even louder, and he was now performing what sounded like an entire musical theater production while simultaneously engaging 3 enemy fighters. "How is he winning?" Admiral Vashi demanded, watching as Malley's ship performed a maneuver that violated at least 4 laws of physics, while enemy pilots apparently struggled to target something so fundamentally unpredictable. "I believe," Tactical Officer Skreeth said slowly, "the enemy cannot calculate firing solutions for a target that moves with no logical pattern whatsoever. Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality." Commander Malley continued, his fighter now flying backwards while spinning in a corkscrew pattern that made Admiral Vashi's head hurt. The final straw for the Skreeth fleet came when Amy Kowalski somehow managed to project a massive holographic image above the battlefield, a small Earth creature wearing a tiny hat with the words "LOLLU Mad Bro" floating beneath it. Admiral Vashi had fought in dozens of battles across his long career. He had seen courage, cowardice, brilliance, and incompetence. But he had never, in his wildest nightmares, he had imagined watching an enemy fleet begin retreating because they could not psychologically process being mocked by a small furry animal wearing headwear. "Sir," Moran announced weakly, "the humans are requesting permission to pursue the enemy while playing something called Baby Shark at maximum volume." Admiral Vashi stared at the tactical display, where the supposedly invincible Skreeth armada was now fleeing in complete disarray, while human fighters chased them while broadcasting children's songs and taking selfies. "Permission denied," he said finally. "I do not think the galaxy is ready for whatever they would do next." 3 hours into what military historians would later classify as the most confusing battle in galactic history, Chief Engineer Telix Mon made a discovery that would haunt his nightmares for decades to come. The humans had somehow gained access to the Eternal Vigilance's primary engineering bay and had redecorated. "Admiral Drehorn to engineering," came the voice over the comm system. "Status report on power fluctuations in Section 7. Telix Mon stared at the scene before him, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as his brain struggled to process what he was witnessing. "Sir, I cannot adequately describe what I am seeing." Amy Kowalski had apparently decided that the engineering bay's perfectly organized, centuries-tested layout was insufficient for her needs. Using nothing but office supplies, adhesive tape, and what appeared to be furniture stolen from the mess hall, she had constructed an elaborate obstacle course that zigzagged through the ship's most critical systems. "Amy," called Torres from somewhere within the mechanical maze, "did you remember to put the safety foam around the plasma conduits?" "Define safety." Amy replied cheerfully, sliding down a makeshift ramp constructed from desk chairs and filing cabinets. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a plasma leak. Telexmon watched in growing horror as Amy navigated her creation by swinging from cable harnesses, vaulting over jury-rigged barriers, and at one point, riding what appeared to be a modified office chair through a loop, the loop she had somehow attached to the main power distribution hub. Sir, Telexmon reported weakly, the humans have turned our engineering bay into some form of recreational facility. They claim it improves efficiency through dynamic workflow optimization. I cannot even begin to process that information, Admiral Drahorn replied. Please tell me they have not compromised ship safety. Well, sir, technically the ship is functioning better than ever. Somehow. I do not understand how, but response times have improved by 32%. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Ad Morden had abandoned all pretense of tactical analysis and was now furiously documenting human behavior with the dedication of a scientist studying a new form of cosmic plague. Personal log. Morden, chief strategic analyst, he whispered into his recording device while watching the main tactical display. Day 3 of human involvement. I have concluded that these beings do not operate according to any known psychological framework. They appear to make critical military decisions using methods that can only be described as completely random. On the screen, he watched as Commander Tom Malley's fighter squadron engaged a Skreeth battle cruiser while simultaneously conducting what appeared to be a gambling competition. I've got 50 credits that says Carlos can hit their engine port while flying upside down. Amy Kowalski's voice crackled over the comm. You're on, replied another human voice. But I bet Brandon can disable their shields using nothing but inspirational quotes and aggressive jazz music. Deal. Morden, you want in on this action? Morden nearly dropped his recording device. I what? You are asking me to gamble on combat outcomes while actively participating in said combat? Yeah, it's fun. Adds excitement to the whole life or death struggle thing. Commander Tom Malley chimed in. Plus, Carlos owes me $20 from the last battle, so I need him to win this one. You are betting money on whether your fellow warriors survive enemy fire, Morden stated slowly, hoping he had misunderstood. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds kind of dark, Amy admitted. But look, Carlos is actually trying harder now because he doesn't want to lose face. Positive motivation through financial incentives. Morden added another note to his file. Humans somehow improve combat performance through recreational gambling. This violates approximately 17 psychological principles and possibly the laws of mathematics. The Skreeth forces, meanwhile, were experiencing what could only be described as collective psychological breakdown. Admiral Kresh Tar, commanding the enemy fleet, had called for his senior staff 3 times in the past hour, each meeting ending with officers staring silently at tactical displays that made no logical sense. Report, Admiral Kresh Tar demanded as his tactical officer entered the command chamber. Sir, the humans have somehow launched an attack using vegetables. Vegetables? Specifically, sir. They have loaded their torpedo tubes with what appears to be Earth produce and are firing them at our ships while playing music that I can only describe as aggressively cheerful. Admiral Kresh Tar's tentacles curled with stress. Are the vegetables weaponized? No, sir. They are just vegetables. But they have small signs attached that say things like peace out and have a nice day and your mom called. She wants you to come home. Back aboard the Eternal Vigilance, Judge Quintara had arrived for what she assumed would be a standard diplomatic inspection. Instead, she found herself standing in the observation deck and watching human fighters perform synchronized loop-the-loops while firing rainbow-colored flares in patterns that spelled out rude words in 17 different languages. Admiral Vashi, she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic despair. Remind me again why we thought contacting these beings was a reasonable course of action. Admiral Vashi stood beside her, watching as Commander Tom Malley's ship executed a maneuver that involved flying in a perfect spiral while broadcasting what sounded like a cooking show. Your Honor, at the time, total annihilation seemed like the worst possible outcome. And now? Now I realize there are fates worse than death. Specifically, winning a war using methods that violate every principle of sanity, logic, and proper military conduct. Judge Quintara nodded slowly. I have spent 3 centuries presiding over galactic law. I have seen every form of chaos, disorder, and cosmic misbehavior imaginable. But this makes me question whether the universe itself has gone insane. The truly disturbing part, Admiral Vashi replied, is that it appears to be working. They watched in silence as Amy Kowalski's voice crackled over the comm. Hey guys, I've figured out how to make the enemy ships play music too. Who wants to start an impromptu dance party in the middle of space? Judge Quintara closed her eyes and wondered if it was too late to retire to a nice, quiet dimension where the laws of physics still meant something. The final confrontation began when Admiral Kresh Tar, commanding general of the Skreeth invasion force, made what he believed was a tactical masterstroke. Tired of his fleet's complete inability to comprehend human warfare, he decided to challenge the enemy leaders to single combat aboard his flagship. It was an ancient tradition, respected across the galaxy, where honor and skill would determine the victor. He had not counted on Commander Tom Mali accepting the challenge by announcing he would dance fight for the fate of galactic civilization. Dance fight? Admiral Kresh Tar repeated through the translator, his mandibles clicking with confusion as he stood in his ship's ceremonial combat chamber. Is this some form of Earth martial art? Oh, absolutely, Commander Tom Mali replied, stretching in a manner that suggested he was preparing for either combat or a yoga class. It's like regular fighting, but with more artistic expression and significantly worse music. The Admiral Vashi, watching the proceedings through a live feed aboard the Eternal Vigilance, buried his face in his hands. This cannot be happening. This cannot actually be happening. Sir, reported Tactical Officer Grix Ven, I am reading massive confusion signals from the entire Skreeth fleet. Their formation coherence has dropped to 12%. Commander Tom Mali began what could only be described as the most militarily inappropriate victory dance in recorded history. He spun, leaped, performed what appeared to be an interpretive representation of a dying star, and at one point executed a move he called the Cosmic Chicken. While humming off key show tunes, Admiral Kresh Tar, a being trained from birth in 7 different forms of lethal combat, stood frozen in complete bewilderment. His tactical mind, honed through countless battles, simply could not process what he was witnessing. Are you mocking our ancient traditions? Admiral Kresh Tar demanded. I'm expressing the fundamental joy of existence through movement, Commander Tom Mali replied, now performing what appeared to be a combination of ballet and break dancing. It's very spiritual. You should try it. This is not combat. This is interpretive dance, the highest form of artistic warfare. Commander Tom Mali announced, executing a particularly energetic spin that somehow conveyed both aggression and whimsy. I call this move the existential crisis of a defeated enemy. The moment Admiral Kresh Tar's neural pathways completely overloaded from trying to understand how dance could be considered warfare, his flagship's command crew experienced what psychologists would later classify as collective cognitive shutdown. The reaction spread through the Skreeth fleet, like a viral infection of pure confusion. Sir, Communications Officer Moran announced aboard the Eternal Vigilance, his voice tinged with disbelief, the Skreeth fleet is surrendering. They are surrendering? Admiral Vashi asked, hardly daring to hope. Their exact message reads, we cannot. We simply cannot. Please make it stop. We surrender unconditionally. Please, by all that is holy in the universe, make the dancing human stop. Admiral Drohorn, who had been silent throughout the final engagement, finally spoke. So we have won. Yes, sir. Complete and total victory, Moran confirmed. At what cost? Judge Quintara asked quietly. At what terrible, sanity-destroying cost? The answer came in the form of Amy Kowalski's voice crackling over the comm system. Hey guys, I've figured out how to make the coffee machine play music. Anyone want to start a victory conga line through the ship? Admiral Vashi looked around at his senior staff. Every face reflected the same expression, the hollow-eyed stare of beings who had witnessed the impossible and would never quite recover from the experience. "Moran," Admiral Vashi said finally, "prepare your official report on this engagement." "It's already complete, sir," Moran replied, holding up his datapad. "I have classified human beings as weaponized chaos and recommended that all future contact be limited to extreme emergencies only. I have also suggested that any species considering warfare against Earth should instead consider immediate surrender, followed by extensive therapy." "Therapy?" "For the trauma of contemplating combat against beings who fight wars using office supplies, terrible music, and interpretive dance." Admiral Vashi nodded slowly. "Approved. Add a personal note that we owe these humans a debt we can never repay, and that we hope never to see them again." "Already included, sir." As the human ships began their journey back to Earth, broadcasting something called "We Are the Champions" at volumes that violated several noise ordinances, the assembled alien fleet remained in stunned silence. They had called for saviors in their darkest hour. They had received something far more effective and infinitely more terrifying: humanity in all its chaotic, incomprehensible glory. The galaxy was saved. Whether it would ever fully recover remained to be seen. But somewhere in the depths of space, Commander Tom Mali was still dancing, and the universe had fundamentally changed forever. The war was over. Sanity, however, would take considerably longer to return.